The new Batman movie did something I have been begging Batman movies to do for the last 20 years. And it did it so well that I don't know if I could be any happier with a Batman movie, period. I think the cast is amazing. I think the cinematography is insanely good. I think the color palette of the movie is really interesting and dour. The set design is really, really cool and unique. Just the costuming is very interesting. Everything about this movie is so high quality, so well done. The story is so expertly crafted that I don't really feel like I need to talk about any of that stuff. I think every other person who reviews this movie is going to talk about that stuff. The thing I want to talk about is the transition of Batman from what he has been in movies and, generally speaking, popular culture into what he is in this film, which is what I think the superior version of Batman actually is. Now, Batman exists on a spectrum. He, on the one end, sort of exists in the movie style of Batman, which is straight up action hero, kind of like a James Bond in a superhero universe. He's a strong guy who gets into fights and he uses gadgets to get out of problems. But Batman's origins were in DC, Detective Comics. His original comic was, I believe, Detective Comics number 27. And in that, he was, let's be honest, a ripoff of Zorro. Zorro at the time was an incredibly popular character, and they kind of wanted a Zorro-type character, and so they made Batman. And so he was fundamentally a detective, and that's been a key part of his character since its inception, to the point where Batman is often referred to as the greatest detective in the DC extended universe. Multiple characters call him this. He is routinely using his deductive reasoning on a Sherlock Holmes style level to solve these problems, to solve mysteries before he has to punch people and use violence or gadgets to get out of problems. If you give a filmmaker a choice, am I going to film a character who is solving a mystery, or am I going to film a character who's punching people and flying around in a jet or driving around in a car and using gadgets to blow things up? As a filmmaker who is telling a story visually, obviously you want the latter. So it makes all the sense in the world why Batman films always lean on the crutch of he's a superhero, so he needs to run around punching people and using gadgets, right? Makes total sense. I think, Nolan, in the Nolan film, The Dark Knight, he does one scene where he's sort of having a talk with Gordon about using irradiated money, and he has another scene where he use fake sci-fi science to unshatter a bullet in a brick and get a fingerprint off it. I don't know what that was about, but yeah, really the detective part of Batman, at least in the Nolan movies, was never touched upon. The detective part of Batman in the older Batman films from the 90s also doesn't really touch upon it too much. I'd say the one exception is probably Batman Forever with the Riddler, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, where Bruce Wayne is solving these riddles incredibly quickly, and he's shown to be very adept at solving these riddles, but it's sort of a tangential thing. It doesn't really heavily impact the storytelling of the movie. And so I've been begging since I saw Batman Begins. I was like, Batman Begins is an awesome introduction of the character, but now I want to see you transition the character from just a young guy who's punching people at his outset as a character into a character who is more thoughtful, more strategic in the way he approaches solving his problems. But that's not what we got. We ended up getting more gadgets, we got more punching, more fighting, more extreme fighting, and that was kind of a disappointment to me. As great as the Nolan films are, as interesting as they are, that was always a disappointment. And so to see this new Batman film go completely the other direction, where we are seeing a Batman that is all about solving crime, to the point where it's funny, I think I call it Sherlock Batman, because the movie, for the most part, spoilers by the way, the movie for the most part is basically Sherlock Holmes and Watson, where Batman is Sherlock and Commissioner Gordon is Watson. I guess he's Lieutenant Gordon in this movie, but they meet up at crime scenes. They have some discussions about clues and about different elements of the case. They go their separate ways. They accumulate information on both sides, and they reconvene. They do that 3 or 4 times in the movie. And And it's really charming. And it really feels like kind of a police procedural or a just an old school kind of Sherlock Holmes mystery, which I love. I love mystery movies, and I think they're fantastic. And seeing a great detective story brought to the screen is always really fun. And it's so brave to take a character like Batman, who people kind of associate as being this big, bombastic superhero thing, and being brave enough to make it a superhero detective story was incredible. You know, it's so interesting to see this movie because it's everything I wanted and more, you know. I just couldn't be happier with the new Batman movie. And it's one of my favorite Batman movies ever. And that's hilarious because last year I did a ranking video of all the Batman movies before I saw this movie. And so if you're curious about my thoughts on the other Batman movies, maybe check that out. Yeah, this movie's fantastic. And I think it really pays tribute really well, so well, to the detective side of Batman, which just really never gets any love in the live action feature film part of his canon. As I'm thinking about it, I don't know what else I would want out of a Batman movie. Like, we got some good action, we got the good detective stuff, we got a really nice introspective version of Batman. I guess the only thing that I would really love to see is a new attempt at bringing Robin to the franchise. You know, we only saw it done one time in Batman Forever, and that was it. And so I would really love to see Robin brought into the franchise. But, like, honestly, you know, in the comics, he's supposed to be like 10 or a 12-year-old kid who gets brought into this crazy crime fighting world. I would really like to see them honestly attempt to do that in an earnest way. But couldn't have loved this movie more. If you guys have not seen this one, you got to see this movie. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Did you guys like the detective version of Batman? Did you wish you had another Nolan-style Batman movie instead? What are your thoughts? Because I adore this. I love this to my core. Couldn't get enough of it. But I'm so curious what other people think about the movie. Because I think it's going to be kind of divisive. I'm not sure how people are going to take this one. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Catch you guys on the next one.